The Chicago Bulls have won 2 games in a row, and everybody's panicking. But we're going to talk about this run of Josh Giddey and why I think that some Bulls fans are conflating organizational incompetence and projecting that on the player's performance on the court. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And it's still the mailbag episode. I want everyone that's listening to this, watching this, if you left a voicemail anytime it looks like between 10 p.m. yesterday up until early this morning, for some reason, the voicemail service was not actually recording those voicemails, so I was not able to use them. So we're going to do 2 episodes today. I'm going to do a mini mailbag today because I got quite a rant I'm probably going to get on. And then I'll drop another full mailbag episode later on today and give you guys a chance to recall in. I know Corn, Greg, some other ones left voicemails last night after that game because of the excitement. And I apologize. The voicemail service that I use conked out. I tested it this morning, though. It's back up and running correctly, so please get those voicemails in. If you left a voicemail last night, like I said, between last night and it seems about 5 this morning, there are some issues going on with the voicemail server. So again, the number for that is 773-270-2799. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and get into everything for today, right? And the run that Josh Giddey's been on since the All-Star break is special. You just can't deny those numbers. Now, it's up to Josh Giddey to prove that this isn't just a flash in the pan, that this isn't just something that's down to because the expectations are removed from the team. But I think what we're going to talk about a lot on today's episode is to highlight and remind everybody that 2 things can be true at the same time. Josh Giddey, since the All-Star break, is averaging 22.4 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists on and shooting 54%, from threes. And the thing is, when it comes down to it, Josh Giddey's playing amazingly well, right? And you look at Josh Giddey and how he's actually giving credit to his teammates for where he is and where this team is right now. Now, the people, and I need everybody that likes to look at Josh Giddey is like, oh, well, Josh Giddey, he's not doing anything special. The Bulls, he's only doing this because Zach LaVine's off the team. Oh, he's XYZ. And that could be true to a great. Again, 2 things can be true at the same time. You can look at what Josh Giddey's doing and recognize the functional things that he is doing, right? That is improving in the game, but also ask the question of, all right, how much of this is he going to be able to still do once we're a better team? Defenses now don't have a different player to zero in on. They're either zeroing in on Kobe or Josh Giddey. And what we saw last night, for example, is that when defenses were zeroing in on Coby White towards the end of that game, Trey Jones and Josh Giddey got to cooking, right? Now, without another team with the gravity of like a Zach LaVine or a Nikola Vucevic, it means that the defenses are able to kind of focus in more on what Josh Giddey's doing. And so, like I said, the things and the structural things that he's doing, getting to the free throw line more intentionally, playing better active defense, Josh Giddey is. The rebounds, the assists, those are already there for Josh Giddey. And I said this before, even if Josh Giddey doesn't average this point output, the other things he's doing does not change. His assists, his rebounds are still things that he's able to do. The defense that he's been able to play here lately, right? Still not nowhere near lockdown defense, but it's good enough defense, right? That has nothing to do with the place of the team, right? But it's still also be able, it's right to say, well, hell, the Bulls still aren't accomplishing much. Again, 2 things can be right at the same time. The Chicago Bulls have not beaten an above 500 team since January 27th. Zach LaVine was still on the Chicago Bulls roster at that point in time. The Bulls are 6-0 against the bottom 9 teams in the East and 0-11 against anyone else during the span where the Bulls have been winning more games, right? And I think that when you look at it, it's a really straightforward thing that I think fans are making a lot more complicated. And that gets me into what I kind of want to talk about overall. We have to stop conflating are issues with the organization, meaning ownership, AK, Eversley. Maybe you can even include Billy Donovan into that, depending on how you want to frame this argument, right? And their incompetence, because AK and Eversley have been incompetent in the way that they've managed players, in the way that they have moved on from players, who's chosen when they're going to move on from players, and how it's affected the value that they get back in those deals. That's organizational incompetence. That has nothing to do with the players that are on the court. You know who didn't make a single roster decision on this team? Josh Giddey. You know who didn't make a single personnel decision with the players that are on this team? Coby White. You know who didn't make a single structural, as far as schematic, decision for this team? The players. That's Billy Donovan, right? And we are in a place in such heightened, just I want to say bitching is really what I want to say, but I'm trying to, again, evolve the show, evolve the way that I talk, and not just be so goddamn well, I said it now. At this point, it is what it is, right? Stop bitching, y'all. Like, or understand where to target and where the proper places that bitching should be associated with, right? It's very simple. People who use this, and shout out to Mo Banks, Mo Banks 10 on Twitter. Y'all should go follow him. Amazing writer, great Bulls mind. He had an amazing tweet today that I do want to read, and I want to bring into this, right? He said this: "Good morning, Bulls Nation. Bulls Peck is right." Talking about Matt Peck. "Matt, like me, watched the Chicago Bulls win 6 NBA titles in real time. That's the standard that the Bulls should always be held to, despite the unwillingness of Bulls ownership to honor that standard." And here's the thing. I 100% agree with the fact that ownership should be holding this team to a championship standard. I 100%, and I've said it many times before, that AK should be somebody who values winning over anything. And we haven't really seen that from AK. We've seen him valuing his relationship with his guys, right? Those type of things, an investment into Billy Donovan. But we have to stop allowing this whole thing of a championship standard mean that players who are out there on the court, the only job that the players on the court have to do is put in work, right? Take the game seriously, develop, and play hard. That's the only things that they have control over. Of course, when they negotiate their contracts, right? We have nobody on this team that has the type of cachet like a star level player to where they're giving input to the front office. We don't have that here, right? So to look at young players that all they can do is develop. All Josh Giddey can do is go out there and try to play his best on the court. That's it. That's all he can do. That's the only thing in his control is the workout regimen that he does, how serious he takes practice, how well he's scouting, and the performance that he puts out there on the court. That's the only thing under Josh Giddey's responsibility. Isn't all of a sudden to go in, and he's not responsible for the years of incompetence by AK. And we project that on the players. We did that with Kobe as well this offseason, right? It's not the players. It's not on Vooch. It's not on DeMar. It wasn't on Zach, right? They don't have that level of control. So you can be able, two things can be true at the same time. AK and Eversley and ownership can be holding this team to a place where winning is the most important thing over everything, but you can still acknowledge and don't have to project that on the players and the work that they're putting out there on the court. Because guess what? They have to fight up against the incompetence of the people that run this team just as much as we do. You think that Josh Giddey wouldn't have wanted a center like Zach Collins that can get out and be out in transition with him? You think that he wouldn't have wanted that if he could just go out and pick his guys? It's not on the players to it's the state that the team is at isn't because of the players making decisions with the roster. Now, you can say things like players like P. Will not progressing. How much are you really working? But then again, if P. Will just isn't that good, that falls on the organization that they drafted him 4th overall. P. Will didn't choose himself to be 4th overall. He just didn't. Now, passive P is a thing, and we've seen his passive nature definitely affect this team, but those are things that he does control, right? And the thing that confuses me so much, and again, I'm somebody who I like to operate in logic. I like to operate in fairness. I like to operate in looking at numbers and everything else that makes sense, right? If you're going to sit there and look at a 20-year-old player in Manas Busilis and seeing all his praises about what he's doing, which is rightfully so, I want to be clear, that's the right thing to do. Guess what? He's on the same team that traded a superstar, on the same team that doesn't have a star anymore, that is benefiting from the fact that hey, this team is going to lose. Let's go out there and play free. The objectivity should be the most important thing in all of this, right? And like I said, we live in a world where two things can be true at the same time. We got to stop. Like, I know it's not going to stop because, again, that would take a level of accountability that this generation it's not any specific generation, that in this era, I think because an era can take multiple generations. That's the word that we're looking for. That in this era, especially with social media and take culture and all this, that people just don't have, right? Is that objectivity. It don't take nothing to be smart, right? It don't take nothing to be objective. It doesn't take nothing to be able to look at things and say, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's not happening, right? These players are going out here and competing. You're being able to go out there and see that the heart of this team, and I guarantee you, right, and this is for everybody, the majority of Bulls fans that are bitching, if they didn't come into this season, right, and this is the same thing that I say the fucking national media does, if they didn't come into this season already with the mindset of, we got to be bad so we can keep a top 10 pick. And this team was playing with the level of heart that they're playing with now, most people will be like, man, damn, hey, this team, we've seen it. It was done with the Baby Bulls. We've seen it in this franchise several times before, right? We have seen it. We have lived that. We have done that in our lifetimes. But because of so much narrative-driven stuff, and rightfully so many years of the incompetence of ownership and the front office, now we sit in a world where everybody's just in this heightened place of bitching and complaining and whining. When you have a player, like I said, the only thing that Modest Bucilis, that Josh Giddey, that Coby White, that Zach Collins, that Trey Jones, that Kevin Huerter, that Julian Phillips, the only thing that these players control in what they are right now is the effort and performance that they give on the basketball court. That is the only thing that's in their control right now. They don't control, hell, Josh Giddey doesn't even technically control if the Bulls offer him the contract he wants next year. He has that to a degree if he accepts the contract, right? He doesn't fully have control over that. We have to be able to separate the failures of the organization from the development that the players are doing on the court, regardless of the ceiling, right, that this team has. Regardless of that, keep in mind, this is a team that has won now 5 games in a calendar month, right? Regardless of the ceiling that this team has, the only thing that the players can do is go out there and put it on the court. That's it, right? And I told you guys this for years. Players don't tank. There's not a single player in this league that takes the court with the mindset of, I got to miss these shots to make sure we get more lottery odds. No, that's an organizational thing. Even when the Dallas Mavericks a couple of years ago were in the last game of the season, they had a business decision to make on, hey, are we going to try to win this game and make the play-in, or are we going to drastically increase our odds at a pick, and then they end up moving and trading that pick, right? But that wasn't the players that were out there deciding that. That was the organization and the coaching staff that was like, hey, Luka, come sit next to me real quick, right? Mark Cuban even said it afterwards. We had to make a business decision. He was there on the sidelines when they decided to sit Luka right there. Come sit next to me, homeboy, right? So, like, it's both sides of the argument can be true. And I see so much of people having two separate arguments, screaming and yelling at each other, basically, because two separate things are both true at the same damn time. Right? And the people that use this whole thing of, well, I watched the Bulls win 6 championships. I did too. You know what I also watched? I watched the team after that didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Winning 6 titles is not a standard, right? No matter what you like to think about your team, and yes, we all as fans would love to think that we have a team that's just like, bam, we won 6 titles. That's how it's going to be every single year. We need to be putting in that work. We know how to do it, X, Y, Z. Jerry Krause is long gone and dead. Right? He was the architect of winning 6 titles, of both three-peats. He was the architect of that. And we haven't had a single GM. Well, no, John Paxson, when he was a GM, was a very good GM. Very good GM. And he built something. He had to rebuild a team twice, basically, and he did it. Right now, we never got to win the title because of other things that were happening, but he built something that was sustainable. Right? There are so many factors that go into an organization being good. And it's just like we just got to be able to separate and be objective enough to be able to have the conversation to where you could be smart enough to be able to tell the difference between what the players are doing and what's in their control and what the organization is doing that's in their control. And the blind hate towards certain players, and it's not just Josh Giddey. I see Coby White haters all the time too, right? And like I said before, nobody is beyond criticism. Don't be so much of a stan where you still think that Josh Giddey can't be criticized. It's somewhere. The people that think that Josh Giddey is the next coming of Jesus and he walks on water and can't be criticized, and the people that think, oh, Josh Giddey, that just crash out over Josh Giddey doing anything good, right, and that hate Josh Giddey, the truth is somewhere in the middle of that. And between that, you know what that's between that? Criticism. You can have valid basketball criticism for every player. LeBron had valid criticisms on him, and he was the best player of a generation, right? Jordan, I hate to tell y'all this, especially the ones that didn't actually watch it, there were absolutely legitimate criticisms to Michael Jordan's game. So yes, Giddey can be criticized. Yes, Kobe can be criticized, but that blind hate and criticism are two very different things. Criticism takes thinking and actual cogent thoughts to be put together to talk about the game of basketball. That's what like 8 Lives couldn't do, for example. He's been in hiding since, right? Cogent thoughts and criticism are okay for any player. Any player. If you're in a conversation with anybody and you have a conversation, for example, it's like, yeah, you know what? The thing with Josh Giddey, though, I really would just like to see him be able to kind of identify when to go over and under screens a little bit. And somebody responds to you, oh my God, but he's played so much better defense than when he did in OKC. They also need to shut up. If somebody's having the conversation saying, hey, Josh Giddey's been balling since the All-Star break. His recognition of when he can attack a player, his recognition of, hey, let me take the smaller player to the rim and force them to foul me. And somebody's like, but oh my God, he's never going to win a championship. For a 22-year-old player, tell them to shut the fuck up, right? That's what you need to do. Again, two things can be right at the same time. And in between those two things is valid criticism, cogent thoughts, and objectivity. And it's very simple at that. But that's my thoughts on this one, man. I had to get that rant off. Let's get into the 2 voicemails we're going to play again. If everybody calls in, we'll do another voicemail bag later on today to kind of filter in from the service messing up. My apologies, even though I don't control that, but my apologies for that. Let's get into this first one, man. This one's from Shay.
What's up, Hayes? This is Shay. Look, man, I heard you and Pat the Designer on Locked On Bulls saying, there's no benefit to us making the playoffs or winning the playoffs, something that y'all say. I can't remember the exact words, but I'm here to tell y'all it is kind of in a way. Yeah, we lose out on the lottery or a top pick or whatever. But look in hindsight, guys like Modest, guys like Julian Phillips, guys like Dalen Terry, they developed a lot at a much better rate than that. And what's the whole point of rebuilding and developing a whole team, not just getting a generational talent? Now, don't get me wrong, a generational talent will help. But for the most part, I believe that if you could get these guys like Dalen Terry, Modest Ellis, and Julian Phillips, and hell, some of our new young guys, like, if you get them to develop and get them in a winning situation so they could, and if they automatically lose in the playoffs, they go into the offseason knowing what they need to do to get themselves better and to make the team a much better as better than this season. Because let's face it, we've never seen the team play. If we had to play like this, like we're playing now, we probably might be in a much better situation than what we are in right now. We come back better as a team by making the playoffs, and not only that, the young guys develop much better after a playoff win. Because let's face it, and I brought this up in my last voicemail with Derrick Rose, with the Derrick Rose situation about having that team and them making it easy for him and showing them. I don't know, something that I said relating to the baby boys. So yeah, it is a benefit in losing this pick and going into the playoffs because it will teach the young guys that we have on our team right now how to win. And one thing that we complain about Patrick Williams is that he hasn't turned into the player that we wanted him to be. And these guys, if they get into a winning situation, they could actually develop a lot faster. And that's the whole point of this rebuild. But anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
Here's the thing, right? I don't feel that the play-in really does much. I think that the Bulls are learning more right now through how they're fighting and competing than what they would the play-in, right? Now, you can make a conversation about being competitive. Like, even you go into the Baby Bulls era, they were competitive in playoffs. What I said was, as far as playoffs don't help, is when you go in and you get your teeth fucking kicked in. The Bulls, I'm sorry, that playoff series against the Bucks, there's not a single young player on that team that following season came back and played better. They all had career worst years if you go and look at it. Every single one of them, right? So the playoffs aren't this magical just by the nature of getting in the playoffs. It all of a sudden means that it's going to jumpstart your development. Being able to be competitive, having good coaching, having good balance in the playoffs is what helps. Now, I will say this. With the way that the Bulls have been playing lately, you could see, hey, the way that this team, they kick in and have to kick into that gear in playoff with the heart that they've been showing here towards the end of the regular season, there's a case to be made, right? But I think it's just the fact of getting your teeth kicked in doesn't really help, right? And I think there's been proof to that, both in this team and when you look at other teams. But here's the thing, and like I said before, players aren't going to play to lose. They're going to play to win. If the Bulls do somehow make it out this play-in tournament and into the playoffs, there's still players that you could draft that are going to be good, that's going to be in that range. There just is. If what you're worried about is lottery balls, I get it. That option goes away. But, let's see what this team does at that point in time, right? And we'll see what the future does hold, man. None of us have a crystal ball, and ultimately, we'll just see what it does hold. All right, let's get into the next one. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald. Just a couple of things I want to throw out there. The way I see it, if Giddey continues to play the way he's playing, he just might earn that $30 million that I guess his agent was joking about. Because if you look at his last 10 games, he's been playing like, at worst, top 10, well, not top 10, but let's just say at least top 15 starter as a point guard position in the NBA. And I guess the top 15 guys make around $30 million. And for someone at his age, that wouldn't be a bad thing. I guess that all depends on what his last 15 games are like. But when I also look around and you guys talk about how you don't see you and Pat talk about how you don't see the Bulls keeping Trey Jones because of the money situation and maybe the fact that there's not enough available spots. From what I can see is, unless you have a major deal done where you move off of Vooch and you add Javon Carter into it, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls just buy out Javon Carter. Not because the Bulls don't care about the money. It's just that they'll just find themselves in the same situation that they did with, Chris Duarte this year, where you had this guy who was only making $5 million, but you couldn't move him because he wasn't worth a damn. Now, Javon Carter is pretty much the same spot. He's making $7 million, but once again, he's not worth having on the floor. So if the Bulls can't trade him, hopefully they'll just cut him and be done with it. Just having him taking up a roster spot doesn't do anybody any good. But if they, and with Lonzo Ball, history with injuries, which is extensive, I think the Bulls should probably offer Trey Jones a 3-year, $30 million deal, because he does fit. He is one of those guys who can start or come off the bench. Either way, he's just one of those glue guys. And for this year's draft, I'm still not sure who the Bulls should get, but I think it should be a big man. If you don't mind, can you spend a minute talking about guys like Server and Danny Wolf? There hasn't been really a whole lot to talk about, just that they're pretty good, and if the Bulls drop out of the top 10 spot, that's who they might get. Thanks.
Giddey earning the $30 million contract extension. I mean, we'll see, right? I mean, with the way he's playing now, he's going to have a lot of power at the negotiating table, the way that he finishes this season. right? But they're not going to look at just the run. They're going to look at overall everything. They're going to talk about everything that he's did, the future of the team, how they see him fitting into the future of that team, what they think they're going to do going forward. All those things are going to play a part into that contract evaluation for Josh Giddey, and it should. So we'll see what the future does hold there. As far as the buyout, the Bulls don't buy out players before the start of the season. Now, yes, they'll buy out somebody like they did Chris Duarte, but that didn't happen until after the trade deadline. That's when you'll see things like that happen. The Bulls won't buy out Javon Carter, for example, this offseason so they can re-sign Trey Jones. They just won't do that. That's not what this franchise does, and that's not how they operate. Now, as far as Trey Jones staying, I said it before, I'm not mad no matter what the circumstances. If you find a way to keep Trey Jones on this team, I'm not going to complain about it. I like Trey Jones a lot. I love the way that he competes. I love the way he operates as a point guard. I love his game. So if you find a way to keep Trey Jones, regardless of how the function you do to get that, I'm going to be very happy with that. Trey Jones is the type of player that I think makes sense. You make a great point with the injury history of Lonzo Ball. With hell, even the chance that a team could come calling trying to trade for Lonzo Ball. His contract's only going to be $10 million next year. A team that looks at Lonzo and says, hey, we need a point guard that can shoot, play some really good defense, like I said before. The Minnesota Timberwolves should be knocking down the door for either Trey Jones or Lonzo Ball. If Trey Jones becomes an unrestricted free agent, they should be knocking down the door to get him. If that's just honestly what I think, right? If Lonzo Ball is on the trade market, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves would do really good at trying to bring Lonzo Ball into that. That's a story for another day. But yeah, I think that Trey Jones coming back to this team, I'm not going to be mad at that at all. We'll just see what the future does hold. But guys, thank you for leaving those voicemails. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.